Oh yeah, that's my big thing actually. Because like in the beginning, I was like, I'm too old to do this because my music's quite punky and so it's a pretty high energy music. And I thought, oh, I'm old. How can I do this? Like people will think I'm ridiculous. But I've decided that it's me making a statement. It's like just because you get older doesn't mean you can't do new things, and it doesn't mean you can't do what you want to do.
Hi, I'm Igor and you're watching the Sonus Aurelius vodcast. In this episode, we're going to be speaking to Connie. Connie is a grief and loss counsellor by day and a punk rocker by night. She's the lead singer and songwriter for the Melbourne Based Band Crumbe, so that's Crumbe with an E. Crumbe is a collision point between surf, punk and emotive folk. Their sound dances on the fringes of Patti Smith, PJ Harvey and the Velvet Underground with a raw B-52 style groove and a healthy dose of post-punk grit. In this interview, Connie talks to us about the transformative potential of creativity and shows us that you're never too old to start your musical journey. Before you start your musical journey, don't forget to like and subscribe if you want to see more content like this. I've got a ton of great new videos in the works, just like this one, and I'd love for you to join me on that journey. And without further ado, here's Connie. So I thought I'd ask a very sort of open question in relation to how you, how did the musical journey start for you? Because you're not really a musician, are you? In the traditional sense, you kind of fell into it.
Yeah, I mean, I started playing guitar when I was quite young. I taught myself to play, and so I did that for many, many years. Excuse me, and I always wanted to sing, but was too embarrassed and didn't think that I could. And then when I was about 20, I started writing some songs just for fun. And then just had a really bad experience with somebody who sort of tried to use my songs in a less than constructive way, I guess. And I shut that down from then on. It was a very complicated situation, relationship, whatever. So I didn't write again, but I always tinkered on the guitar off and on, but pretty busy with life and became more of a visual artist. I was a photographer for many years. Um, and then when I gave up photography after about 35 years, I became a therapist and sort of started getting more into the idea of music and went to have some singing lessons that were given to me as a gift. And, was pretty old by that stage. I was like early 50s, I think. And yeah, the singing teacher was pretty amazing. And she suggested I go home and write a song so that she could teach me to sing in my own voice. So I promptly went home and I wrote a song. And I came back and she said, wow, you actually wrote a song. And I said, yes. And that was the start of my songwriting. It's just never stopped since then. So I guess I'm thinking about timeline. I think that was about 8 or 9 years ago, maybe 10. And I guess I've written, I don't know, 60, 70, 80 songs since then. Yeah, I guess all those songs that I didn't write since I was 20 were kind of waiting. And just started to sing the songs to myself, didn't share them with anyone. I was pretty embarrassed and not planning on performing or anything. And then I met a guy who wanted to start a band, and I thought, yeah, fun, let's jam. Never jammed in my life. That sounds like a like a lot of fun. And that somehow developed into what is now my band. I was pushed to perform by the guy who is now my bass player. He and I were jamming. The original guy was, we sort of ended our jam sessions, but yeah, and I don't know how it happened. I just one night, my bass player kept saying to me, let's go and do an open mic. And I was like, there is no way I'm doing that. Like, that's not my scene. I'm not a performer. And he said, look, let's just come along and have a look. So I said, okay. So we went along and we went, to a local open mic and we were checking it out. And I said to him, either I do this now or I'm never coming back and doing it because I'll be too scared. And so we put our names down and we got up there and it was the probably one of the hardest sort of hours of my entire life, I reckon. It was very, very, very difficult. I was very frightened, shaky, couldn't function very well. But I got through it. That was the main thing. And it was sort of like, when you ride a really scary roller coaster, you want to do it again.
Yes, I know that feeling.
So it was like, the ultimate challenge. And I was like, oh, I need to do this again. I need to do it better. And that's kind of where it just kept kind of rolling along. I just kept thinking, I've got to be able to do this. I've got to keep getting up there until I can do this. It was strange. It just became my goal. So that sort of led to, finding the rest of our band members and performing our first gig in 2000 and probably 18 or 19. We had our first gig. Um, and I was late 50s by then.
Yeah, it's been
So,
such a long journey for you from the first time you picked up your guitar until the first song you wrote. It seems like there
right,
was
I
20
know.
to 30 years there, and
I
having
know.
taken it on now, it's also kind of you've demonstrated you can do hard things in life and overcome so many challenges, and you kind of got hooked.
Yeah, well, that's exactly right. It is like getting hooked because you do get quite a rush from it. So it's kind of like a drug, like, you want to continue to kind of, experience that rush. There's something about it. And it really, yeah, it just drew out a whole other part of me that had never seen the light of day, this performer self, which is, I'm generally quite a low key kind of person. So it was very different. It was a very different experience. And still to this day, you know, I think I still struggle with it a bit. I get nervous and ask questions to I have this part of myself that says, "What are you doing?" And I have to have a conversation with myself, you know.
And it's been it's had such a transformative effect on your life. You've almost found something within yourself you didn't think you had.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think when I was very young, I liked the idea of it. I loved music and it just really, it just, I could feel it in my body. I had this ache to be a part of it and this kind of almost grief feeling um, when I gave it up and I didn't ever pursue singing. Like I had this almost this physical pain in my body wanting to sing. It was really quite, yeah, it was interesting. And then once I started singing, it was such a such a good feeling. And it was just, like the singing for me is I'm more interested in the feeling of that than playing the guitar. I think the guitar is a kind of a tool that I use so that I can write songs and sing and have some music underneath it. Um, but I'm not a musician and I'm not a singer really either. I just, I guess I would consider myself more like an artist rather than a musician or a singer. So, and it's also something that I do as part of my self-care because I work full time and my job's quite taxing. So, as a therapist, I work a lot with relational trauma and, interpersonal kind of work really interests me. I'm very much, I guess, passionate about relationship and interpersonal experiences. And I write a lot about that stuff. I think I draw it from somewhere quite quite deep in a way. And I do, like I used to think Actually, I still think, when I share my songs, I think nobody's gonna relate to these. They're like, to me, they seem quite personal in a way. And yeah, I was really surprised when people started saying, "Oh, I really like that song," or whatever, wanted to listen to them. I would kind of laugh to myself and think, "Isn't that funny that they were interested in my in my songs?"
It's like
Yeah.
you were able to synthesize the experiences you were hearing in your work as a grief counselor and synthesize it and relate, integrate it with your own experience, and then kind of produce this relatable message almost.
I don't know if the message is relatable, but it's exactly right. I do. I sort of, draw on um my experience as a therapist, but also my experience in my life and ongoing experience in my life. And yeah, I it's funny, I sometimes write songs. I actually often write songs and I have no idea what I'm writing about. And I write and I kind of think, hmm, I like the sound of it. I'll continue on with it. But there are times where I write a song and I don't know what it's about until like a year later. And then I think, oh, that's what that's about. Yeah.
And so in terms of like what you write about, what themes do you think sort of come out in your music on reflection?
I think I write a lot about love and loss and emotional experiences. I think my music's quite emotional, which is makes sense because I don't see myself as a very emotional person. So I think it's like that's that part of me that comes out in my music. Um, I really relate to the emotional side of life, but more yeah, express it more in my art, I guess. Often it depends on what's going on in my life. So, for example, at the moment, I'm writing a song, and it's been going on for a while, actually. It's probably started a couple of months ago, and I just kind of had a couple of words, and it turned into like a chorus, I guess. And then I didn't come back to it for quite a long time. I came back to it a few weeks ago, and this song's taking a really long time for me to write, which isn't the usual for me. Um, but I've sort of realized that, after writing the first two verses, which were really quite hard to write, um, I kind of stood back from it a couple of days ago and I was like, why is this taking so long? And what is this song about? And then I realized what it was about. And I thought, well, no wonder I can't write the rest of it because the thing I'm writing about is not resolved. It's still happening. It's like in the present. So it's like I'm deconstructing it in my mind and in my unconscious, and it's coming out on the page. But because there's no real ending to it yet. Well, and it because it happens very often, it's very unconscious. Like it'll just kind of start to rise to the surface and I'll start writing in words, but I'm not thinking I'm going to write about this. It's very organic. I just let it kind of unfold. And if there's something happening that's kind of had a beginning and a middle and an end in my life, it usually comes out much easier. And then, I may not know what I'm actually writing or saying until I finish. And then I kind of look back at it and I go, oh, that was about that.
So you seem to write songs quickly and quite efficiently when there's a resolution, there's a clear beginning, middle, and an end. And with songs that are a little bit loose threaded or potentially ambiguous because you're going through a process, it makes more sense for you to park them.
Yeah, 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 that's exactly right. I will park them and then come back to them. And um yeah, if it takes too long, I often forget about them and I don't come back. But I mean, sometimes like I've come back years later, like 2 years later, and thought, oh, I can use that now. And I finish the song.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
yeah.
it's really interesting. And so just in terms of I guess your creative bank. Obviously, there's the material that you have that might be sitting there, but then there's also like your influences and people you appreciate as artists. And you describe yourself as a bit of a punk, or in the genre of punk.
Yeah. Well, kind of post-punk, not British punk, but that sort of post-punk that's um quite popular, I think, around Melbourne
Mm.
these days.
Yeah, and how does that genre influence your creative process or your music, your creativity?
Well, it's funny. I find myself doing that kind of music because I write a lot of songs that seem, I mean, they're kind of more lyrical, I guess, and yeah, like I'd say one of my or a few of my big influences from my past would be like Joni Mitchell or Neil Young. More that style of writing influenced me a lot. But musically, I just don't feel like it's there's something very satisfying about playing and writing and singing something that's got a lot of energy to it and a lot of kind of rhythm that for me, like I feel that in my body more. So yeah, so my music tends sometimes I call it folk punk.
Yeah, it's like a fusion of the 60s and 70s and
Yeah, mixed with, like I really love like the B-52s or PJ Harvey, that kind of stuff. So it's quite, yeah, my musical tastes are pretty broad.
and it
Um,
seems like you also appreciate the physical benefit or the feeling in your body. So
Very much about, yes, the music is definitely about the feeling in my body. And that's where you feel so much of your emotion is in your body. So I guess it is a way to be in contact with that. It's like a very satisfying kind of feeling to feel the music.
yeah, that's such an interesting point because folk music is really about that cerebral element, about the storytelling, about connecting with emotion. Whereas, I think at its core, punk music is about physicality and expression of really raw emotion.
Yeah, actually, I had never thought about that, but that is very interesting to think of it that way. Because I think too, as a therapist, I work a lot with, kind of both realms. So I work a lot with body sensations and, what does it feel like in your body? Because when we operate in a more integrated way with, the thinking brain and the feeling brain kind of operating together, it's 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 a it's a clearer, more sort of um it's a more fulfilling way, I think, to live your life is from all of those parts of yourself. And I maybe that's why I tend to do my music like that, is, I like the feeling of being in my body, but I do like to think about the song as well. So I write, the lyrics are important to me. Like they mean a lot to me. They're like my poems.
Pushing against time, pushing against hate, pushing hard against the world, rhyming to its fate.
My music is quite, I guess if you listen to the lyrics, that can be quite dark, but the music itself is the opposite. So it's that sort of paradox, which I think really reflects life in a lot of ways. We're very sort of um we're very multifaceted humans, so we can kind of hold the dark and the light and all the gray in between at the same time. So I like to mix it.
I have to say, one of the songs that you shared with us at the songwriting workshop was a really good example of that. I think it was what was it called, The Train or something?
The unknown, no, sorry, you're right. The train, yes. Yeah.
Yeah, and just the nature of the song, it had a driving rhythm, and it had I think something really compelling about it that you just wanted to move to it, and then but like it's such an intriguing simplicity, but at the same time when you unpacked it for us, there was such depth in it, and it had like a bit of darkness as well.
I thought it had a lot of darkness, that particular one. But yeah, that pretty much describes, I think, most of my music is that it's quite rhythmic and you do want to move to it. And it's got a lot of energy, that the actual music, but the lyrics, it's a quite lyric driven, but they're quite dark. And I think when people come to the gigs, I don't think they really notice so much the darkness in my lyrics. Sort of like they're a little bit hidden, sort of like our emotions can be a lot of the time.
The way we
And
are on the surface versus what's going on inside.
exactly, exactly. So yeah, I think they're a lot about what's going on inside, the things that we don't necessarily share all the time.
And in terms of the band and your I guess your collaboration with the other musicians, how's that sort of shaped your creative process?
Um, Gosh, I couldn't imagine myself doing any of this without my band. Like, to me, it's like I am creating a black and white line drawing, like in a coloring book, like a children's coloring book. I'm sort of creating the page, but the band is coloring it in. Yeah, I really feel like the music comes to life when they start, you know, playing. Whereas when I do it, when I'm sort of writing it or when I'm practicing it solo, it just doesn't have the same impact. So yeah, I feel like they really bring it to life. Um, I tend to do my writing myself. Like I write the songs on my own and then I bring them to rehearsal and play them, and then we just kind of, see what unfolds. It's a pretty organic process, really.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it sounds like that works for you too.
definitely. Yeah, I don't. I really like to just see what comes of it. It's sort of like you know, like a surprise in a way, and it really, yeah, I really love it. I love when we all start playing and it starts to get a kind of, it starts to take shape, and then I just feel so, I feel quite excited and happy. I'm hearing it going, "Oh, wow." Look, we've been together for a long time now, I think, since probably 2018 or 19. I'm not sure. And yeah, there was COVID and all the lockdowns, and so we lost a lot of time together during that. But um yeah, we're pretty solid and stable and really growing together. Like I've noticed how much more we kind of play off each other now, which has taken a while to develop that. So, and that's kind of a new thing. And look, they're always happy to hear what I've got. Like when I say I have a new song, they say, let's hear it. And um, they're always keen to, get some rehearsal time and play some gigs. And yeah, it's pretty relaxed. We just enjoy it. We don't have any big aspirations, for the band necessarily, but yeah.
And that low pressure dynamic really helps you be as creative as you possibly can.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't think I think it'd be very different if I had pressure. Like I feel like the the fact that it is really just mostly for fun makes it less pressure. That works. Yeah, that works for me. Yeah, I don't mind. I'm pretty relaxed about it, I
Yeah,
think.
it doesn't have to be anything really. It's just kind of you finding that it's a cathartic process, and it's a good social opportunity to engage with like-minded people,
Yeah.
hopefully inspire people, and it's working for you.
Yeah, exactly. It's a great way to connect with other people and have a good time and make art.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah. So, what's my last question? Is what advice would you give someone who it might be similar to you, and then but it is later in life, and
Oh yeah, that's my big thing actually, because like in the beginning I was like, I'm too old to do this because my music's quite punky and so it's a pretty high energy music and I thought, oh, I'm old. How can I do this? Like people will think I'm ridiculous. But but I've decided that it's me making a statement. It's like just because you get older doesn't mean you can't do new things, and it doesn't mean you can't do what you want to do. Um, I think I think that's a shame that lots of older people feel like they have to hide themselves or give up on new adventures or whatever. So I'm hoping that I'm kind of making a statement in a way. It's like, and to young people too, to say, just because we're older, it doesn't mean we're necessarily useless. You know.